Welcome. In this module, we'll talk about the collapse of the perimeter, which is remote work, BYOD, and hybrid environments. For decades, cybersecurity was built around a simple assumption. Organizations had a clear boundary. Work happened inside offices. Systems lived on internal networks. Devices were issued, managed, and monitored. If something was inside the perimeter, it was considered relatively safe. If it was outside, it was treated with suspicion. That assumption no longer holds. Modern work does not happen in one place, on one network, or on one set of devices. The traditional perimeter, the idea of a clear inside and outside, has already eroded. In many organizations, it has effectively collapsed. This section explains why that collapse happened, what replaced it, and why misunderstanding the shift creates systemic cyber risk. When location was the primary security control. In earlier models, security relied heavily on geography and network placement. If you were physically present in an office and connected to the internal network, access was granted more freely. Firewalls, intrusion systems, and monitoring tools were positioned at the edge, the perimeter, to keep threats out. This model worked reasonably well in a world where workstations stayed in offices, servers lived in data centers, access paths were predictable, and devices were centrally managed. Security controls were designed around a smaller number of choke points. Trust was implicit once you crossed the boundary. Remote work, the first fracture in the perimeter. Remote work was not new, but it was once the exception. Over time, remote access became normal. Virtual private networks, remote desktops, and cloud-based tools extended internal systems beyond physical offices. Each extension weakened the perimeter slightly. Then remote work became widespread. Suddenly, employees were connecting from homes, hotels, cafes, and mobile networks. The organization's systems were no longer accessed from a handful of known locations, but from thousands of unique environments, each with its own security posture. The perimeter did not move, it dissolved. BYOD, when devices stop belonging to the organization. Bring your own device, or BYOD, accelerated this shift. Personal laptops, tablets, and smartphones began to access corporate systems alongside managed devices. These personal devices were shared with family members, ran unvetted software, connected to unsecured networks, lacked consistent monitoring. From a usability perspective, BYOD increased flexibility and productivity. From a security perspective, it introduced uncertainty. The organization no longer controlled the endpoint, yet still trusted it. This is not a failure of policy. It is a reflection of how modern work actually functions. Home networks, the new corporate edge. When employees work remotely, their home networks effectively become part of the organization's operating environment. These networks were never designed for enterprise security. Home routers are often poorly configured, rarely updated, and shared with smart devices and exposed to unknown risks. Yet, sensitive data, credentials, and workflows pass through them daily. The perimeter is no longer something the organization owns. It is something it depends on without direct authority. Hybrid environments multiply complexity. Many organizations now operate in hybrid models. Some work happens in offices, some happens remotely, some systems are on-premise, some are cloud-based. Each combination introduces new access paths. Security teams are no longer defending a single environment. They're managing a shifting mosaic of locations, devices, identities, and networks. In this context, perimeter-based thinking becomes a liability. You cannot defend what you cannot clearly define. Why inside the network no longer means trusted. One of the most dangerous legacy assumptions is that internal traffic is safe by default. In modern environments, attackers rarely break in through technical exploits alone. They log in. Compromised credentials allow attackers to move freely, often using the same access paths as legitimate users. What, once authenticated, traditional perimeter defenses offer little resistance. From the system's perspective, the attacker looks normal. This is why so many incidents escalate after initial access. The perimeter was never breached, it was bypassed. Identity replaces location as the primary control. As location loses meaning, identity takes its place. Security decisions are increasingly based on who is requesting access, what device they are using, what they are trying to access, under what conditions. This shift reflects reality. It also increases pressure on identity systems. Weak authentication, reused passwords, or over-permissive access undermine the entire security model. When identity fails, everything downstream fails with it. Credential abuse over technical exploits. Modern attackers prefer credential abuse because it is reliable. Stealing or tricking someone into revealing credentials is often easier than finding and exploiting a technical vulnerability. Phishing, malware, and social engineering all serves the same goal: gaining legitimate access. Once credentials are compromised, attackers avoid triggering alarms, blend into normal activity, or move laterally with ease. The collapse of the perimeter makes this approach even more effective. Why perimeter thinking persists? Despite its limitations, perimeter thinking persists because it is familiar. Firewalls, network zones, and internal access feels tangible. They create the illusion of control, but illusions are dangerous. Security models that no longer reflect reality create blind spots. They encourage overconfidence and delay adaptation. Understanding the collapse of the perimeter is not about abandoning all legacy controls. It is about recognizing their limits, designing for a boundaryless environment. In a world without a clear perimeter, security must be context aware, identity driven, and continuously evaluated. This does not mean everything is untrusted all the time. It means trust is conditional, not assumed. Access is granted based on evidence, not location. This mindset prepares the ground for modern security approaches, including zero trust, which we will explore next. Why this matters for cyber risk? Many high profile breaches were not the result of sophisticated hacking, they were the result of outdated assumptions. Organizations defended a perimeter that no longer existed. So, understanding how remote work, or BYOD, and hybrid environments reshape risk allows you to see why traditional controls fail and why new models are necessary. Cybersecurity failures often begin with mental models that are no longer valid. So, the key takeaway is the traditional security perimeter has collapsed. Work is no longer tied to location, devices are no longer uniform, and networks are no longer owned end to end. In this environment, trust cannot be based on where someone is. It must be based on who they are, what they are doing, and under what conditions. Recognizing the collapse of the perimeter is the first step towards understanding modern cybersecurity and why old assumptions no longer protect us.